Welcome to Dear Jane. I'm your host, Scott Baker. Marcy Little, our other host, is on assignment. Literally, that's the line they give, but she actually is on assignment. So we're going to go solo today. Excited to visit with you. We're going to talk about some of the things happening in the political world as it relates to pro-life and some of these state ballot initiatives you've heard us talking about. Happening in about 10 states. There's still some that are to be decided, but we're going to talk with somebody who is really involved in all of these races, Dena Espenscheid from the Leadership Institute, and we'll visit with her in just a second. But first, quick word for our sponsor, our friends at Cogency Strategic. They are helping pro-life agencies move into the 21st century when it comes to messaging and targeting voters. It is so important that our side matches the sophistication of the other side when it comes to micro-targeting, who they're talking to, making sure our voters get out, making sure that the messages resonate in a way that will get people motivated to not only get out and vote, but tell their friends, make sure their friends, everybody understands what's at stake on the ballot in this election and in future elections as well. And also, they can help you raise money to do it. They've got a great fundraising team. So Cogency Strategic, cogencystrategic.com. You need to check them out and just see how they can help you spread the pro-life message to voters during this important election season. As I mentioned, lots of states going to be determining the level of abortion, unrestricted or not, into state constitutions. That's going to be a big focus this fall, not to mention, of course, the national races, the presidential, that sort of thing. Dena Espenscheid is with the Leadership Institute. She travels the country helping to train people on how to get ready, how best to really get out and motivate voters, spread the message, that sort of thing. We're excited to visit with her today on Dear Jane. Dena, it's great to talk to you again. I had a chance to see you around from time to time, and it looks like you're actually at home. Taking a break from all your travels and everything that's been going on. What are you seeing out there as you do your travels and working with people involved in the politics?
I am seeing really big excitement on the pro-life side. I am seeing in weird places, I am seeing people coming out and saying things that I never expected them to say. For example, I went into a grocery store. I know, shocker for me, because I was only home about 100 nights last year. I actually went into a grocery store and I was trying to buy meat, and I said, oh my God, what happened to the prices here? And the woman next to me goes, they've been up for about 3 years. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, you know how to fix that? She goes, yeah, vote for somebody different. And I was like, yes. And the guy who was doing the samples goes, Trump. I said, what? He goes, I can't say. I was like, and this was Northern Virginia in the uppity, rich, snobby grocery store. And I was like, good, they get it. Yeah. They get it. Yeah. So we've got that going for us. And then it's just so my job is to do trainings for pro-life groups to teach them how to win elections. And whenever we do a training, people come out of the woodwork. We did one in Western Massachusetts, and they had never had more than 4 people show up for a training in the Berkshires. And we had 12 people show up, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's 3 times their normal. We had a 300% increase. The other night I had 91 people in Jefferson City, Missouri. If you would have told me we could get 91 people together in Jefferson City, Missouri, I wouldn't have believed you. The woman thought maybe I could get 25 people. The Lutherans for Life, man, they came out, they talked. We talked about how to defeat the Missouri ballot initiative if it gets on the ballot.
So you say excitement. On the pro-life side, you're seeing people pretty excited about this stuff?
Yes and no. It's this weird thing where the ones who are involved are really excited, but they don't know what to do. And the ones who aren't involved are excited about the presidential race and the possibility of the presidential races. Okay. And so it's this weird thing where I'm telling everybody, hey, you don't have to worry about turnout this election. You just have to make sure the people turning out are voting pro-life. And so that's the big push, is get in front of the voters now to talk to them about why this abortion amendment is radical, so when they do go to vote, they don't accidentally vote the wrong way.
And I do want to focus on these states with ballot initiatives, but as you travel and talk to pro-life people, what kind of impact, if any, have you seen the shift in the GOP platform? Has that upset people, or what kind of feedback have you heard?
The only people that I've seen upset about it are super involved pro-lifers who understand the politics. Quite frankly, I wasn't even that upset about the pro-life platform shift because to me, I look at it and I say this is a document we care about for about 3 weeks once every 4 years. Drop it and move on. Because I also knew that they were trying to streamline a 90-page document into a 16-page document, so you couldn't have paragraphs of policy explanations anymore. Do I like it? Do I not like it? We'll worry about it again in 3.5 years. Frankly, if you are concerned about the GOP platform, there are two things you need to do. Number one, get involved in this year's elections. And number two, get involved in your county party now and stay involved. That way you can start your campaign to run for national delegate in 2028. That campaign starts now. And so once you get involved in this year's elections and stay involved in this year's county party and stick with it, then you can run for state delegate, then you can run for national delegate, then you can get yourself on the party platform committee. You can go up a week early and you can actually impact the platform.
What I hope doesn't happen, people who are griping about the GOP platform, and they say, well, I'm going to withhold my vote or whatever. When you consider the alternative, I mean, it's night and day. So that's the most ridiculous argument I've heard.
It's not even night and day. It's like day and hell. Okay. So it's, I can see the light. They'll listen to us. They have worked on pro-life stuff before. And then the opposite side is we want abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy without limitations, maybe even after pregnancy. You've got Walls who signed the bill to, I mean, the executive measure to put tampons into boys' bathrooms because you never know, trans boys might need tampons. You've got they've stopped it so that whereas the leftist party of 20 years ago was saying universal health care, the Obamacare was all about universal health care. Well, now that same party is saying, okay, this fetus was born alive, it is crying, it is breathing air, but because nobody wants to take care of it, we're going to kill it. Mm-hmm. We're going to let it suffer, we're going to drown it, we're going to dunk it in formaldehyde, or even worse, because we removed an arm or a leg before it was born and it's not quite viable, we're going to cut it open and take its organs while it is still alive. Vivisection. This is the stuff of Mengele. It's evil.
It's documented too. I mean, this whole thing. Well, that doesn't. It's documented.
Yeah, and like finally, the David Daleiden Center for Medical Progress tapes are coming out. The ones that Kamala Harris helped cover up and hide for so many years. Yep. And the doctors are talking about, like the one I just referred to, was featured in a hearing on Capitol Hill, hosted by Marjorie Taylor Greene back in either March or April. I can't remember the exact date, but they played the tape. And the tape was of the abortionist saying, what I do when I realize that I can do it, I hold the baby in with a set of forceps so that the belly button doesn't come out. The umbilicus is what she calls it. Then we rip off a leg. So the baby is outside the woman's body. She pulls off a leg, and now it's not a partial birth abortion. So now she can deliver the baby, cut the cord, the spinal cord, so that it can't move, and then they can take the fresh organs for harvesting. Like, I'm not making this vivisection stuff up. They're talking about it and they're doing it. And even if the baby was only at 20 weeks or 18 weeks or 17 weeks or 15 weeks, that is still the stuff of nightmares. Yep. That is the stuff of horror movies. That is the stuff that when it happens on the big screen in Hollywood, we all go home and say, thank God that's not actually happening. And yet, there are abortionists walking among us who are talking about this while drinking their Chardonnay and acting like it's perfectly normal because, hey, they get to buy a Lamborghini.
Right.
What the heck?
Yeah. And
sorry,
the other thing
passionate about this stuff.
Well, no, that's good. And the other thing, that I think people need to consider is, besides just, abortion, the abortion law specifically, the other side, Kamala Harris's side, would prosecute pro-life people. whether it's the pregnancy center, we've seen this, the pregnancy centers or whatever, they would go after and try to penalize, prosecute, imprison pro-life people. And so that's a reality as well that I think people need to keep in mind.
They have done it time and time again. There's been over 300 attacks on pro-life organizations and churches since the Dobbs leak. And so far, they've arrested 4 people in Florida with a FACE Act violation. And that was even state charges, not federal charges. And what are we're up to like 57 pro-lifers being charged with FACE Act violations, and everything from you get in a fight over your son outside of a facility, sorry, they are not clinics because they don't provide health care, we walked in, we handed out some roses and some information, and we walked out, not actually blocking any entrances. They're all being targeted. We've got the bubble zones in different states that are being challenged right now. They want to implement that federally so that pro-lifers can't stand within certain space from there. They think we're terrorists. Just look at the Fort Liberty, Fort Bragg. For 7 years now, we found out they've been using a screen that says that anybody with a Choose Life license plate might be a terrorist. What?
Yeah, that's the
what
choice.
About the people going in and out of Fort Bragg who are just good pro-lifers who happen to serve the military? You're telling me that you were telling the MPs to watch them just in case?
Yeah. I mean, that's the radical decision that people have. So let's talk about these states that have constitutional amendments. It struck me the other day, we used terms like enshrine abortion into the Constitution. What the heck? Give us the Schoolhouse Rock 101 version. So what's really at stake? And we'll go through the list of states here in a second. But in these states that are voting on state constitutional amendments, what's really being decided?
Okay, so Schoolhouse Rock version. Usually you've got the I'm Just a Bill where the legislators get together with the lobbyist or the people. They write up a law. It goes to the committee. It goes to the House floor. It gets over to the Senate committee. It goes to the Senate floor. It goes on to the governor. He either vetoes or signs it. It becomes law. A state constitution is where it gets put on the ballot either by the legislature, such as in New York or Maryland, or by people signing a petition. That would be Florida, Colorado, Nevada, Arizona, Missouri, Nebraska, Arkansas, and Montana, still all living in one form or another. The people sign petitions, then it goes on to the ballot. If those get voted on, mostly by a simple majority, though Nevada you have to vote twice, Florida it's 60% to pass, and Colorado it's 55% to pass. But if this radical abortion language, radical pro-abortion language gets voted on, it goes into the state constitution. Most of them are putting it into Article 1. Article 1 of the state constitutions are basically where people are guaranteed the right to freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, the freedom of the press, all those basic freedoms that we take and hold dear to ourselves. They're putting a right to abortion right up there in with those. And in some of these, it's not just a right to abortion, it's a right to all reproductive decision making for all individuals, meaning that children can have abortions without limitations such as parental consent. And if it's a reproductive decision making, then it only takes a leftist judge to see, well, okay, the right to take cross-sex hormones will make you sterile, therefore that's a reproductive decision, and you, Tommy, at 10 years old, can start taking these male, her name used to be Teresa, by the way, but the judge is now calling him Tommy, Tommy, and you can start taking those against your parents' will. Kids can't even get tattoos before 18 without parents' consent. They can't go to rated R movies without parents' consent. But we're talking about putting into the state constitutions that children can get abortions and potentially sex changes without parental notification or consent in every single one of these cases. Transgender is only in a few of them.
Yeah. Well, and some people might be like, okay, why the basic explanation? One of the things that we're hearing a lot is people believe in states like Florida and other states that after this vote, even if the vote succeeds for the pro-abortion side, that somehow the legislature or the governor will fix it. Well, they'll veto it. We have heard that, and that's not the case. That's how it happens with these things.
It is absolutely not the case. And as a matter of fact, Florida's abortion amendment is so short. I could read it here. It is one long run-on sentence. Hold on, I'm looking it up quickly. It says, except with an exception from a previous amendment that had parental notification, no law shall prohibit, penalize, delay, or restrict abortion before viability when necessary to protect the patient's health as determined by the patient's health care provider. Let's just dissect that, because you're saying, oh, DeSantis will take care of this. He'll just veto any laws that come up, or we'll put laws back in. No law shall prohibit, so therefore we can't stop any laws before viability. Hold on to that word viability for just a moment. Penalize, meaning that if an athletic trainer student at FSU, where my niece is about to start, decides to start providing abortion pills in her dorm room, she can't get kicked out of the dorms, and she can't be penalized by getting kicked out of school, and she can't be sued by the state for facilitating abortions, even though she's not licensed. We'll get back to that one in a moment. Delay, no more 24-hour delays, no more 72-hour wait period, no more cooling off time, or restrict abortion. Restrict, meaning that, okay, I want to do abortions in my facility, but the doors aren't wide enough for a gurney to get through. No more. I can do the abortions now, whereas currently under medical protections, you have to have the doors wide enough for the gurneys to get through, and the state has to be able to come in and inspect to make sure that I'm cleaning the machines and cleaning the instruments. All of that goes out the window. And we know from the women and the men from And Then There Were None that when nobody's watching, they don't clean very well. They're using dirty instruments. Before viability. Viability is not defined in the Florida amendment. So that means that viability is whenever the patient's healthcare provider determines it. Well, the patient's healthcare provider is the abortionist, who is, again, not necessarily a physician, because there's no regulations now, because that would deny, restrict, delay the abortion. And if the healthcare provider says, healthcare provider, it's not really healthcare, says, well, in my facility, a baby born at 30 weeks might need oxygen, might need a UV light tent, it might need an IV, and I don't have any of that, therefore a baby could die before I can deliver it. That means a 30-week, a 32-week, a 36-week-old baby could be aborted in that facility because it's technically not viable according to the healthcare provider, the abortionist. The way this is written is disgusting. And even after that 36-week viability, it says as determined by the patient's health, which means I've got a backache right now. I've got a migraine. I've got TMJ. All of those are health reasons that are inflamed by abortion or by pregnancy, and therefore you can have an abortion from that 35 weeks to 40 weeks based on any of that. Mental health is included in there. And it undoes Florida's. Now, there are some pro-lifers that hate Florida's law because it has exceptions, but for public policy reasons, the Florida law is very well written. It says that after the heartbeat is detected, the baby and the mother are protected, unless she's a sex traffic victim and the authorities have been notified. That's for any age. So sex traffic victims are given a chance to get out of that lifestyle. Unless she was the victim of rape or incest and the authorities have been notified. Unless there's a health exception and 2 physicians have signed off saying, yes, this will cause a major impairment of her physical health. Unless her life is in danger in an emergency medical situation, then it only takes 1 physician. And unless the baby is deemed unviable for due to regulations, due to some medical diagnosis, and again, there you need 2 physicians, not medical professionals, not healthcare providers, but physicians to sign off on that. This thing is so radical, and the governor won't be able to restrict anything. The legislature won't be able to pass any laws because of the way it's written it's got these giant, big semi-truck hole loopholes and no way to close it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad you went through that because, and even if if you don't live in Florida, this language is similar in other states. Just the vagueness, like I'm so glad you focus on viability because somehow the viability is supposed to, they want you to think that that means some sort hard and fast point in time where
Yeah.
it does not. That
Yeah.
is very, very vague, and it's up to the interpretation of whoever you're talking to at the moment.
Yeah. Whereas you and I, as pro-lifers, would say viable is any baby, any pregnancy that could be born, or any baby that is 21 weeks could be born, has to have go through medical treatments. A lot of these say without extraordinary medical treatments. Well, what's an extraordinary medical treatment? In the case of Terry Schiavo, 12, 15 years ago, a woman who was in a permanent vegetative state, her husband was allowed to starve and dehydrate her because the food and water were considered extraordinary medical. So all it takes is one leftist judge to say, well, a UV tent is extraordinary medical, a IV, antibiotics, anything that's going to cost the family money and time in the hospital is extraordinary medical. So where does that put us? 37, 38 weeks? 36 weeks. We had at Leadership Institute, we had 2 babies born at 36 weeks. Both are perfectly healthy. Neither one needed extra time in the hospital. And then I know of a family that had one born at 37 weeks, had to spend 2 weeks in the hospital. So you never know which one. There's no guarantee of no extraordinary medical treatments needed in order to make that baby viable. It's up to the abortionist to decide. And again, the abortionists say, well, in my facility, we don't have any of that, so therefore this baby is not viable yet.
Well, and it's up to the abortionist to decide. And I use this illustration, and it's really this crazy. Would you go to a used car dealer and say, hey, do you think I should buy a used car? What do you think they're going to say? Well, of course yeah, of course. An abortion provider who stands to gain financially from your decision is going to say, you know what, we think you should have an abortion. Oh, okay. I mean, it is that ridiculous that's who can tell you, yeah, you need one. The ones who stand to gain from it.
Yeah, and I want to circle back to this health exception thing too, the health of the mother. This one is another one of those that's as big as a semi-Mack truck. The fact is, if you talk to any member of APLOG, now they are medical and they're very intellectual, and so they'll say, well, there's some limitations on this language, and then they'll go into like this 1 out of 100 million, example, whatever. But the basics is that well, first of all, let's just clear the road. Ectopic pregnancy care is available every single state at every single hospital. Miscarriage care is absolutely legal, absolutely available in every single state, every single hospital. Life-saving medical care. There is no state that has outlawed abortion to save the life of the mother, because the fact is abortion is never necessary to save the life of the mother. Because during a medical emergency, the decision whether or not to separate the baby from the mother is based on intent. The intent is to save the mother. Therefore, separating a preborn baby from the mother, whether that baby is viable or not, whether that baby can be treated or not, it is not an abortion, as long as they are not going in and purposefully digging the baby out piece by piece. So let's clear that off the table. But because of medical advancements in the past 5 to 10 years, a good doctor can treat any medical condition for any woman. And if the baby dies during that treatment, that's a tragedy. That's not an abortion. So if she has cancer, it can be treated. They can start treatments before birth. If it's preeclampsia, if it's high blood pressure, if it's depression, they've got treatments for all of that. Think about it. When you and I were young, we had the movie Steel Magnolias, and Shelby died because her kidneys got destroyed because she had such bad diabetes.
Spoiler.
And she should never have been pregnant, right? Spoiler alert. That's ingrained in the memory, in the collective memory of everybody our age and older. Oh my gosh, women with diabetes might die if they have a baby. We've had wonderful medical advancements in the past 5 to 10 years where now they are treating women actively who have terrible diabetes, juvenile diabetes, and they are having healthy babies, healthy mamas. A good doctor can treat both. A bad doctor will be like, okay, when are we scheduling the abortion? Or do you want to have an abortion? Or you should have an abortion. And going back to your point about the abortionist will profits off of it, the doctors do too, in a way, because if they have a high risk pregnancy or if they've got bad results from a pregnancy, they may not want that tally on their scorecard. I know of a woman up in Maine who had 23 years old, had a baby with Down syndrome. They are delighted. They love their daughter. Well, they went in for their first appointment with their next child. And the doctor's first words were not, hello, congratulations, you're pregnant. It was, when do we schedule the abortion? At 8 weeks along. No testing. And then he proceeded to pressure the couple into getting an abortion because she might die. This baby's going to have Down syndrome. It's going to be worse. All this other stuff. By the way, that language I just gave you about because of medical advancements in the past 5 to 10 years, a good doctor can treat both the mother and the baby for any medical condition. And if the baby dies from that treatment, that's a tragedy. That's not an abortion. They heard that exact language being taught that night at a Leadership Institute training. And then they looked at each other and said, I think we have a bad doctor. And they went and they got a second opinion, and their new OBGYN walked in and said, congratulations, you're pregnant. Here's your due date. Let's talk. And she's like, so you don't want to abort just because we've had a Down syndrome baby, a baby with Down syndrome? She's like, do you guys want to abort? She goes, no. Okay, then we're not aborting. Let's move forward. And baby was born healthy. Mama was healthy.
So let's make sure that we go down the list of states again.
Yes,
so
sorry.
so here are the states, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. So the states where we
Go right
know
ahead.
for sure that it's going to be on the ballot are Colorado, Florida, Maryland, New York, Nevada, South Dakota.
Correct. Those are the ones that are absolutely on the ballot
For
right
sure.
now.
And then the
Yes.
TBD, because it's still in the court or whatever, Missouri, Montana, Arizona, Arkansas, and Nebraska. Is that correct?
Yeah, Arizona, Missouri, Arkansas, Montana, Nebraska, Nebraska. And I say
Yeah.
Nebraska twice because Nebraska's got one that would create a right to abortion on demand through all 9 months. And then they've got one that's a right to life after, a right to prohibit abortion after the first trimester with exceptions for rape, incest, and life in the mother.
Did we miss any states?
So they've got competing.
Did I hit all the states or did I miss any?
You hit all the
Okay.
states. So do you want me to go through a few of them that have got special cases?
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
things?
So which ones stand
Okay.
out?
Nevada is interesting because in their state, the citizens have to pass it twice. So if they pass it this year in 2024, we go back and we fight it again in 2026. So it's not done. It's not over. Does not mean that we can't fight it out and fight it with all of our worth. I've already been out there. We did a Spanish training with 75, I should say Spanglish. It was half Spanish, half English, with 75 native-born English as a second language speakers. And they are spreading the word throughout the casino floors and the hospitality industry out there in Reno. So that one is not over yet. By the way, taking one step back, the reason why these are on many of these states, it's not just because they wanted the opportunity to take it, to put abortion in the state constitution. It's because it's a presidential year or there's a big Senate race in a lot of these states. And so that's why they moved forward. So Nevada, it's presidential year and there's a Senate race out there. On Florida is interesting because the opponents need 60% plus one vote to win, which means we just have to get 40% plus one vote to win. The pro-lifers need 40% of the vote plus one. Polling on this one has been all across the board. So it's going to be interesting. If if I'm going to take time off and I'm going to go to one of these states and I'm going to door knock for about 3 weeks. This is what I do on my vacation every year because I am just that exciting. But I'm probably, as much as I hate this because I love Florida, I used to live there. My niece and nephew are in Florida. I'm probably not going to go to Florida because of all of them, that would be the easiest one to win. However, the opponents have dumped in something like, it was either 23 or 32 million. I've looked at their finance reports this morning. And the pro-life side, as of before July 30th, which was the last July 30th, there was a report, a finance report, and I haven't looked at the finance reports after July 30th. We had collected fewer than $1 million. So we are completely outgunned in Florida. But nobody has started spending their money yet, at least not that I have seen. And again, granted, I'm not on the ground in Florida, so I could be wrong on the other side spending their money. Pro-life Floridians are getting geared up, especially they've got very strong support from the Republican Party. DeSantis is saying, Governor DeSantis says, we want to defeat this. The Secretary of State has come out against it. The Attorney General has come out against it. One of the cool things in Florida, this is so crazy. So a lot of these amendments in the states, they have to have a fiscal note attached. How much will this amendment cost the state? When it was first put to the people, the fiscal note was decided to be undeterminate. We don't know if this will save money or cost money, so there's no determination by the state on how much this will cost. The ACLU went back to the committee that decides the fiscal notes, and they literally made the case. We want to reopen the fiscal note because when abortions become available in Florida again, we'll have fewer people, and therefore fewer children in schools saves money. So they went and they fought it out. Groups like Susan B. Anthony List and Michael New, Dr. Michael New from Charlotte Lozier, went down, they testified, and they were able to show that this will actually hurt the state because there'll be fewer workers and there's going to be more sex trafficking and more crime and a whole bunch of other things if we allow abortion, and that it will open up the door for tax-funded abortions. So the new fiscal note says, while we can't determine how much this will cost the state, it will create a case where tax-funded abortions could become a reality. So then ACLU lost their minds, said that's not what we wanted. They sued the Supreme Court, and so far the Supreme Court, to my knowledge, has not weighed in, but probably won't weigh in because now the new fiscal note says this creates tax-funded abortions. I love that. Like, thank you, ACLU, for that gift. Colorado is one of these where they only put it on the ballot because of the upcoming elections and trying to turn out leftist voter turnout. They need 55% to win, but Colorado already has basically abortion on demand. What this new one does is undo an amendment that was passed a long time ago to allow for taxpayer-funded abortions. So it would put tax funding into the state constitution and take out any semblance of parental notification anymore. But they need 55% to pass. We need 45% to win, 45% plus one vote. That is achievable, but it's difficult in Colorado because they've gone Rocky Mountain High,
they're
let's just call
among
it.
the bluest of the blue anymore.
Yeah, which is really a shame. Maryland and New York are unique because the legislators put it onto the ballot. Abortion's already available for there. But what this does is just prevent future more conservative legislators and more conservative governors from undoing their progress towards the bad side, the dark side. I don't like calling it progress. It's their regression, their pro-abortion amendments. Also in New York, it would create into the state constitution, because again, all it takes is one leftist judge, the right for children to get transgender treatments, the right for the state to take children away from their parents if the parents disagree with their transgender. It would also allow for men in sports and all this other stuff. It's under the guise of an equal protection amendment. So they're just adding in a bunch of language that would legalize abortion no matter what, and protect anybody regardless of their sexual choices, we'll call it. Which again, 10 years down the road, if a uncle goes to court with his 10-year-old nephew and makes the case that we love each other and he's chosen this,
Yeah.
and there's a right to make those choices in the state constitution, all it takes is one leftist judge. It's really sickening. And then the ones that are the signatures are still being validated in Arizona and in Missouri. In Arkansas is an interesting one because the leftists messed up their paperwork. A lot of these states have got strict laws and regulations on what paperwork needs to be filled in, and it appears that the leftists forgot to turn in paperwork for some of their paid signature gatherers, and 14,000 signatures were tossed, which puts them below the limits. The pro-aborts are currently suing the state Supreme Court to have those signatures put back in. Montana's another one that's in court right now. It keeps going back and forth. I'm not exactly sure which side the current lawsuit is on, but basically the Montana State Secretary of State looked at all of the signatures and found that inactive voters, people who had not voted in the last 4 years or 6 years, signed this thing in large numbers. So people who have decided not to vote in the Trump elections, not to vote in all these elections that have been happening, for one reason or another. They've moved, whatever. Who knows why they haven't been voting. But they haven't been active. So they moved on to you're still eligible to vote if you show up with your ID, but we're going to count you as inactive. They signed the petition in large numbers.
So
that's being sued on right now.
As we consider these states, and you mentioned the money disparity, we just know that the pro-life side is going to be outspent 3-1, 7-1, 10-1. It's going to be substantial. How do we overcome that? How do we not? I mean, sometimes I hesitate talking about that too much because I don't want people to be like, oh, well, then what's the use? How do we overcome that from a campaigning standpoint?
The biggest thing that sways voters is not necessarily money, because we've got instances across the board of conservatives being outspent by liberals and liberals being outspent by conservatives in winning, the people that were outspent winning. What people vote on is word of mouth and who they trust. So while the left often relies on media and social media, the right, what we can do is be smarter. One of the ways that President Obama won in 2012, the re-election was extremely close, was that they created a campaign where they asked people on Facebook to reach out to other people that they knew on Facebook and ask them to vote for President Obama. And here's a list of reasons. Grab one reason and send it to your friends on Facebook. You can do the exact same thing. You can go into Facebook. Now, I don't recommend, now they've set up systems where they prevent other groups from doing this type of thing. So I can't send 30 messages through Facebook Messenger a day with the exact same message, but I could do 5 a day. So do that. The other thing is, you've got this wonderful machine in your hand. This computer has got more power in it than the Apollo missions. I was at my training at Jefferson City on Monday, and I had everybody take out their phones, and I said, pull up anybody you know from Missouri who is not here. So I pull up Nellie Roach, and I wrote to her, and I did this live, so there's a few typos. It said, hi, Nellie. I'm in Jeff City and found out how radical Amendment 3 is, because in Missouri, if Amendment 3 makes the ballot, it'll be called Amendment 3. Do you want parents to lose parental rights? No, ? Then join me in voting no on Amendment 3. and I pushed send. And she sent me back a thumbs up. Now he knows Nellie because
Yeah.
it's his boss. But the thing is, like, you can go through your phone and look to see who do I know in this state. I've got 1,600 contacts. I could go through and start, and a lot of them are in South Dakota. Now they're my South Dakota pro-life. My South Dakota contacts are almost all pro-life because I worked in South Dakota for 10 years in the pro-life community up there. But I can sit here and from my house in Virginia and start just texting people over and over again. Vote no on Amendment G. Here's a reason why. Vote no on Amendment G. Here's a reason why. And all you have to do is find the state's website, the pro-life campaign, and they will have on there, here's our talking points. Here's what we want you to talk about. Florida's Too Extreme for Florida has got a site like that. I know that Missouri has a site like that. Arizona, It Goes Too Far. New York, it's called the Coalition to Protect Kids. And you could just go in and grab their talking points and just text out, hey, I just found this out about amendment whatever. Will you join me in voting no? That's one of the big things. If we start doing our voter contact and just getting in front of people who trust us, people who love us, people who understand us, and saying, hey, look, Florida's already got exceptions for rape, incest, sex trafficking, health, life, and life of the baby. We don't need an amendment to guarantee these things because we've already got it. I know that works because I was in Florida over Easter and I explained what was in the current law because the news was not doing it. They were calling it an abortion ban. It bans all abortions. And somebody in my family went, oh. And I said, no, that's not what it does. And I explained it to her. She goes, oh, I can live with that. She went from a net gut negative to a gut, oh, that's fine then. Yeah, of course I'm going to vote no. That's stupid. Why are we doing this?
It's funny. Well, people like me and you, and people probably who listen to this podcast we're into this, right? We're following it. We know the ins and outs. The vast majority of people are not like us. Let's just be honest. And they have no idea that it's even coming up. Let alone what a yes means, what a no means, and that sort of thing. So this kind of communication you're talking about is imperative because it's not going to be coming from anywhere else.
Yeah. And the sooner you do it, the better off it is. So there's two things to do. Number one is donate today to the campaign of your choice. I've already donated to many of these campaigns because every time I go into one of the states to do a training, I drop at least $50. My job is costing me a whole lot of money, but because I care about this stuff and I believe in it, so I put my money where my mouth is. And the other thing you can do is start communicating today. The fact is that in Ohio last year, when they did the exit polling, they asked about when did you make up your mind on this? And September 1st was the prevailing date that people chose before Labor Day. Voting starts, September 1st is only...
Yeah, it's coming up.
Only 3 weeks away from today. 1, 2, 3. People start voting in some of this, in Pennsylvania on September 10th, I want to say. Live ballots need to go out to military and overseas voters by September 23rd through 26th. And in Virginia and South Dakota, early vote starts on September 20th. Those are the three that I know that start the vote early. Now, some of the states like Colorado has got a date where all of the ballots are mailed on the exact same day. But early vote, the absentee in-person vote, and I'm going to cut it off right now because I could hear one of your listeners saying, but Dena, early vote leads to fraud. Yeah, I don't care. Okay? We can't change election law until we win elections. So we can't win elections if we don't play by the rules on the court. During my trainings, I put up a picture of me in my 4th grade girls basketball uniform because that was the first year my team had access to a 3-point line. So we didn't like shooting 3-pointers because they were hard. We were playing against teams who had had a 3-point line to practice with since kindergarten. Guess who won the games? It wasn't my team. They played by the rules on the court. We didn't. We lost. The reason why you want to vote early, number one, if you vote the first day of early vote, nobody else can go down with your name and your address and claim to be you. That's number one. It protects your ballot. I'm not saying that happens often, but it does. The Attorney General of Houston, I believe it was, in the last primary, went down to vote and found somebody had already cast a ballot in her name. It turned out it was her wife. They clicked the wrong line, but that one was explainable. If it wasn't your husband or your wife who voted in your stead and they were marked as not having vote, guess what? You're voting provisional, and your ballot may or may not be counted. So lock in that vote. Number two, the campaigns save time and resources. Let's just pretend like these are all voters, right? I've got 10 groups of voters, but I've only got enough money to reach out to 3 of them. As soon as I can get these 3 to vote, I can reach out to these 3. And when I get them to vote, I can reach out to these 4. So that on election day, I just have to get these 2 to vote. But if these 3 never vote early, I can never reach out to these other ones. Lock in that vote so that the campaign can start spending money on all the other voters who need to go out and vote. Because we can't spend money on other voters until we get you to vote first. And you can't just say to the campaign, oh, don't worry, I'm going to vote no matter what. I'll use myself as an example. Oh, don't worry, I vote in every election, Scott. That's a lie nowadays. A couple years ago, we had a special election. And I was in Florida for Christmas when I got the call saying, hey, Dena, do you want to work this other special election? I'll pay you $2,000 for 2 weeks of work. Heck yeah, that's good work, right? While I'm on vacation time, getting paid for my own job. So the first thing I did when I said yes to that special project was I asked my elections office to send my ballot to my brother's house where I was for the next 10 days. It never arrived. 3 days later, I got the instructions on how to vote. I called up the office. They said, nope, we mailed your ballot. It should arrive any day. I called every single day but Christmas and Christmas Eve, and the ballot never arrived. When I got home, the ballot was in my home mailbox. I did not get to vote because my plans changed, and they sent the ballot to the wrong place, even though they sent the instructions to the right address. You never know what's going to happen. Scott, I have this heartbreaking story from the Villages where the man died on election day and his wife spent time getting his ballot in instead of holding his hand and remembering their life lived together.
Well, it's
you don't
no,
know
you
what's going to
don't. You
happen.
don't,
Vote
and it
early.
is that important. So, communicating with your friends,
Yeah.
making sure they understand what's at stake, what's being voted on, and now's the time. It's not too early. That's the best thing that people can be doing. So the Leadership Institute's
Yep.
got all kinds of great resources. We would steer people there. The leadershipinstitute.org. A lot of trainings and things like that, and they can have you come out. You pretty much go to every state all the time anyway, so you can just come out and give trainings
Yes.
and give people tips and stuff.
Yes. Yes, and I should say the views of the Leadership Institute faculty, me, are not necessarily the views of the Leadership Institute. They are a 501c nonpartisan nonprofit and don't take a position on elections.
Yeah.
Just to cover.
Yes.
So everything that we've talked about before now was me talking, now Leadership Institute. Leadershipinstitute.org/GOTV. GOTV stands for Get Out the Vote. Leadershipinstitute.org/GOTV. We've got more than 90 Get Out the Vote trainings still coming up. I'm probably going to toss another 20 into the system this week. As soon as the different states agree to it. My pro-life states are a little slow at realizing, yeah, we need to get out the vote. These are the trainings where we teach you how to go door to door, how to talk on the phone, how to send those text messages, what to say in those text messages, how to do and why to do early vote, and then how to participate in election integrity. We had 130 of them scheduled across the country. It'll probably be closer to 150 to 180 by the election date. And again, we've got 90 on the books right now. So we've already been doing these. We're going to continue doing them through October. So that's the place to go. And then if you want a training in your neighborhood, if you want me or one of my colleagues to come out, the cool thing is the pro-life trainings, when we do them for pro-life organizations, for right now, don't tell my bosses. They know, but they don't tell me to do anything about it. They're free. You find me a room, you find me an audience. I will bring dinner. I pay for all the expenses. You just get your audience to show up. And what we get in response is the name, the email address, and the zip code of the people who took the training, so that we can go to our donors and say, look at all the people we trained. We're making a difference. Keep funding us. So I don't ask you to pay. If the room is really expensive, we'll pay for it. If the room is cheap or free, we'll let you pay for it. But that's the only expense, that and getting people together. And again, in Jefferson City, the woman said, I don't know if I can get more than 25 people together. 91 people showed up. She was like, it's so big. I can't believe it. I'm like, I can believe it. I knew this was going to happen. This is good. People are pro-life and we care about this. If you're willing to do anything for the babies, come out and come out to a Leadership Institute training, learn how to go door knocking, learn how to phone call, learn how to text message, learn how to do better at social media, because we've got to do it all for the babies.
So depending on when this airs, we got about 14 weeks or so, roughly, give or take. So it's going to be pretty intense. Would be it is.
Yep,
I don't think we can overstate just how important some of this stuff is. Dena, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us here today.
Scott, you're amazing. I look forward to seeing you the next time I get to see you.
Thanks again for listening to Dear Jane.
You can follow along every day on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and X. And make sure you also are subscribed so you never miss an episode on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. Ring that bell so you're notified and you never miss an episode.